The diner was quiet except for the soft clinking of silverware against plates. Two young black girls sat in the corner booth, laughing over milkshakes, until a police officer walked in. His heavy footsteps echoed as he approached their table, suspicion painted all over his face. What happened next would leave the entire diner frozen in shock, and teach this cop a lesson he'd never forget. The soft glow of neon lights spilled across the rainy street outside. Inside Mel's diner, it was a picture of small-town calm. The air smelled of fresh coffee and warm pancakes, with the faint hum of an old jukebox in the corner. At a booth near the window sat two teenage black girls, best friends since grade school. One wore a bright yellow hoodie, her curls bouncing every time she laughed. The other had braids tucked neatly under a denim cap. They were just being themselves, sharing milkshakes, swapping jokes, and scrolling through their phones like any other teenagers enjoying a Friday night. To everyone else, they blended into the cheerful rhythm of the diner. But then, the heavy glass door swung open. A gust of rain blew in, and with it, Officer Daniels. His boots thudded against the tile floor, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. His eyes scanned the room, not warmly, not casually, but with the sharp edge of someone looking for trouble. He spotted the girls almost immediately. His jaw tightened. Without hesitation, he started walking straight toward them. The chatter in the diner dipped. Forks paused midair. The girls looked up, surprised, as his shadow fell across their table. "Evening," he said, voice low but edged with authority. "Mind telling me what you're doing here?" The girls exchanged a look. What did he mean? They were customers. They were eating like everyone else. Just having dinner, sir," one of them said cautiously, her voice polite. But Daniels didn't smile. He didn't nod. Instead, he pulled out a notepad. "You got IDs on you? Both of you?" A silence spread across the room. No one else had been asked for ID. A family of four in the next booth glanced nervously at each other. The waitress froze behind the counter, coffee pot trembling slightly in her hand. The girl in the yellow hoodie shifted uncomfortably. "We're just kids. We didn't do anything wrong." Daniels leaned in closer, his shadow swallowing their milkshakes. "Answer the question. IDs. Now." The room grew tighter, tenser. Every eye in the diner was locked on this table. The unfairness of it all was so heavy it could be felt in the air. And yet, through the tension, neither girl raised her voice. Neither panicked. Instead, they sat straight, shoulders squared, meeting his glare with quiet courage. Because, deep down, they knew this moment wasn't just about them. It was about something much bigger. The storm had begun, and the diner was about to witness a showdown no one would forget. The tension inside the diner was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every patron felt it. The unfair spotlight on those two girls, who had done nothing but order burgers and milkshakes like everyone else. The officer's voice grew sharper. "You don't have IDs? Where are you hiding?" The girl in the denim cap frowned. Her voice was steady, but her hands clenched beneath the table. "We're not hiding anything. We came here to eat. Is that against the law?" A faint murmur spread across the diner. People shifted in their seats, eyes darting between the officer and the girls. They all knew the truth. No law had been broken, but few dared to speak up. Officer Daniels smirked, tapping his notepad with his pen. "You girls look a little young to be out this late. And this isn't exactly your neighborhood, is it?" The words hung in the air like poison. The implication was clear. The girl in yellow finally spoke, her voice rising just enough to carry. "We're allowed to be here. We paid for our food. Why are you only questioning us?" Daniels leaned back, arms folded across his chest, projecting authority. "Don't get smart with me. Answer the question, or I'll have to take you in for trespassing." Gasps rippled through the room. The waitress behind the counter dropped a spoon into the sink with a clatter. A man at the corner booth shook his head, muttering under his breath. The girls exchanged another glance, part fear, part defiance. They knew what this was. They had heard about moments like this from parents, teachers, even the news. But now it wasn't a story. It was happening to them. The girl in denim cap straightened her shoulders. Her voice didn't waver. "We're not trespassing. This is a public diner. We're customers, just like them." She gestured to the families, the couples, the workers on break. For a moment, the diner was frozen in silence. And then something shifted. A woman at a nearby table cleared her throat. "She's right. They've been sitting here the whole time, officer. Eating, just like me and my husband." The officer turned sharply toward her. "Ma'am, this is none of your concern." But his dismissal only emboldened others. A man in a work uniform spoke up. "No, I think it is. They're kids. They're not bothering anyone." The murmurs grew louder, like a wave building strength. One voice turned into two, then three, then half the diner. And suddenly, Officer Daniels wasn't just confronting two young girls. He was facing a room full of witnesses, their eyes burning with disapproval. His jaw tightened, but he refused to back down. Instead, he took a step closer to the booth, lowering his voice into a threat. "You better watch yourselves. One wrong move, and you're coming with me." But this time, the girls didn't flinch, because now they weren't alone. The confrontation had become something bigger, something the entire diner could no longer ignore. The diner felt like it was holding its breath. Every eye was fixed on the corner booth, where the officer loomed over the two girls like a storm cloud ready to break. "IDs." Now, Officer Daniels barked, his voice echoing louder this time. He slammed his notepad onto the table, rattling the glasses. The girl in yellow jumped slightly, but held her ground. Her milkshake wobbled, but she didn't reach for it. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye. "We didn't do anything wrong. You're the one causing trouble." Her words hung in the air like a spark, and Daniels took it as a challenge. "Watch your tone," he hissed, leaning closer, his hand brushing the radio clipped to his belt. "You think this is a game? I could call backup right now." A hush swept the diner. The families in nearby booths shifted uncomfortably, kids tugging at their parents' sleeves. The waitress behind the counter looked pale, torn between fear and outrage. Finally, a man in a suit at the far end of the room stood up. His voice was calm but firm. "Officer, that's enough." Daniels turned, eyes narrowing. "Excuse me." The man adjusted his tie and stepped forward, his presence commanding. "I've been sitting here watching this unfold for 10 minutes. These young ladies have been nothing but polite. They've ordered food, they've paid for it, and they're sitting peacefully. You, however, are harassing them." The officer bristled. "Sir, I don't need you interfering in official police business." But the man didn't back down. He pulled a wallet from his pocket and flipped it open, revealing a badge, not a police badge, but one from the district attorney's office. "This isn't official business," he said firmly. "This is profiling, and I won't stand for it." A collective gasp swept through the diner. The two girls looked at each other, eyes wide with disbelief. The room, once silent, began buzzing with whispers. Daniel's face flushed red. He stammered, trying to regain authority. I was just making sure." "Making sure of what?" The attorney snapped, his voice rising now. "That two teenagers can enjoy a meal without being treated like criminals? Because from where I'm standing, the only person out of line here is you." The room erupted in agreement. "He's right," shouted a woman near the counter. "This is harassment," another man chimed in. The officer, once confident, now looked cornered. His posture stiffened as he realized the tide had turned against him. And at that moment, the girls, who had sat quietly enduring his scrutiny, finally allowed themselves a small, triumphant smile, because they knew the storm was no longer on their shoulders. It had shifted, and Officer Daniels was about to be schooled in a way he never expected. The diner was no longer quiet. What started as whispers had swelled into a wave of voices, all directed at Officer Daniels. His attempt to intimidate two teenage girls had backfired spectacularly. And at the center of it all stood the district attorney, his badge catching the fluorescent light. His voice carried authority, but also something deeper, conviction. "You came into this diner looking for a problem," he said, eyes locked on Daniels. "But the only problem here is your behavior. Harassing minors without cause is not law enforcement. It's abuse of power." The officer's face tightened. He shifted uncomfortably under the weight of the attorney's gaze, but his pride wouldn't let him retreat. "I don't answer to you. I was doing my job." The attorney stepped closer, his tone sharp enough to cut the tension. Your job is to serve and protect, not to target two kids because of the color of their skin. If you think anyone in this room is going to let you twist that truth, you're mistaken. The crowd stirred with energy. The waitress, who had been frozen in fear minutes ago, finally found her voice. He's right. I've worked here for 10 years. These girls are regulars. They come in all the time. They never cause trouble. A man in a construction vest added, "We've all seen what you're doing, officer, and we're not going to let it slide." The room erupted in agreement. Some people stood, others pulled out their phones, recording the confrontation. The tide of power had shifted entirely. Daniels was no longer in control. The officer's hand twitched toward his radio, but the DA's voice cut through the noise like a gavel striking wood. Think very carefully about your next move, because right now, there are at least 20 witnesses and half a dozen cameras pointed at you. Every word, every action, you're accountable for it. Daniels froze. His eyes darted around the room, seeing phones raised, patrons glaring, the girl sitting quietly but unshaken. For the first time, he realized he wasn't the authority here. He was the defendant in the court of public opinion. The girl in the yellow hoodie leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but piercing. "You picked the wrong table today." The diner fell silent again, the weight of her words landing like thunder. Even Daniels seemed momentarily stunned. The DA folded his arms. "So, officer, are you going to continue this charade, or are you going to apologize to these young ladies and walk out of here with what's left of your dignity?" The entire diner waited, breathless, to see what Daniels would do. For the first time that night, it was clear the girls weren't the ones on trial. He was. The diner buzzed with tension, every eye locked on Officer Daniels. His chest rose and fell quickly, his jaw clenched tight. For years, he had worn his badge like a shield, never questioned, never challenged. But tonight, in this small-town diner, that shield was cracking. The district attorney didn't move an inch. His voice was calm, but razor-sharp. "See, the problem with intimidation is that it only works when people stay silent. But your silence ends tonight, officer. Everyone here sees what's happening." The officer scoffed, but it sounded more nervous than confident. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," the attorney countered. He slipped a phone from his pocket, tapping the screen. Within seconds, he pulled up a page, the glow of the screen casting light across his face. "You've had 3 formal complaints in the last 2 years. Harassment, unlawful stops, excessive force." Gasps rippled through the diner. Patrons leaned in, listening intently. Daniel's face drained of color. The attorney held the screen up, his voice carrying across the room. "Every single one of those complaints? Against young black men and women. And every single time, you walked away without consequences. But not tonight. Tonight, there are too many witnesses for this to disappear." The girls stared wide-eyed, their shock mixing with vindication. They weren't crazy. They weren't overreacting. This wasn't just about them. It was a pattern. The waitress shook her head, disgusted. "So this is what he does. Comes in here, picking on kids because he thinks no one will stop him." A man near the counter stood, his voice booming. "Enough is enough. We're not letting this slide." Daniels tried to retake control, pointing a finger at the attorney. "You can't just accuse me like that in public. Those complaints were nothing, just people trying to stir trouble. But no one was buying it. Not anymore." The DA's tone grew colder, his words cutting deep. "Trouble? Trouble is what you created here tonight. Trouble is abusing your authority because you think no one will call you out. But here's the truth, officer. You just expose yourself in front of an entire room of witnesses." The crowd erupted with nods, murmurs, even claps of agreement. Phones were still recording. The evidence of Daniel's behavior, his words, his threats, his bias, was now captured forever. The girl in the denim cap leaned forward, her voice quiet but commanding. "You wanted to scare us, but you only showed everyone who you really are." Her words landed harder than any legal argument. Daniels blinked, his bravado cracking. For the first time, the weight of accountability settled on his shoulders. And in that diner, packed with ordinary people who refused to look away, the truth could no longer be hidden. The tables had turned. The air inside the diner was electric. Phones were recording, customers were on their feet, and Officer Daniels stood exposed, his authority crumbling under the weight of truth. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the district attorney broke the silence, his tone measured but firm. "You've embarrassed yourself tonight, officer. And worse, you've embarrassed the badge you wear. If you have any sense left, you'll apologize to these young ladies and walk out of here." Daniel's eyes darted around the diner. He saw only defiance, no allies, no sympathy. The waitress stood with her arms crossed, the construction worker still glaring, the families whispering angrily. And in the booth, the two girls sat straight-backed, unshaken, their milkshake still sitting untouched, but their dignity intact. His throat tightened. Pride wrestled with humiliation. But the weight of the stares, the cameras, the whispers pressing down on him. He knew he was finished. With a sharp inhale, he muttered through clenched teeth, "Fine. I apologize." The words were hollow, but they echoed nonetheless. The girl in the yellow hoodie tilted her head, unimpressed. Not to the room. To us. Directly. Daniel's jaw worked as if chewing glass. Slowly, he turned back to the booth. His voice was strained, almost bitter. "I'm sorry." It wasn't heartfelt. It wasn't noble. But in that moment, the balance of power had shifted entirely. He wasn't the one in control anymore. They were. The district attorney stepped forward, lowering his voice so only Daniels could hear. "Leave. Now, before I file a report that will make sure this night follows you for the rest of your career." Daniels glared at him, but the fight was gone. Without another word, he turned on his heel, stormed toward the door, and shoved it open. The sound of rain swallowed him as he disappeared into the night. The diner erupted, not with cheers, but with a heavy sigh of relief. The tension that had gripped the room finally loosened. The waitress hurried over to the girls' table, setting down 2 fresh milkshakes on the house. "You two were incredible," she said softly. "Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." The attorney gave the girls a proud nod. "You showed more courage in 20 minutes than some people show in a lifetime." The girl in the denim cap smiled faintly, her hands still trembling, but her voice steady. "We didn't do it alone. Everyone here stood with us. That's what made the difference." The patrons nodded in agreement. A quiet unity filled the room, strangers bound together by the stand they had taken. The girls leaned back in their booth, finally able to breathe again. They weren't just 2 kids anymore. They were symbols of resilience. And the diner, once an ordinary stop on a rainy night, had become something more, a reminder that injustice can be defeated when people refuse to stay silent. For the rest of that night, the milkshakes tasted sweeter, the laughter rang louder, and the memory of the storm they had weathered together lingered long after the rain outside had stopped.